It's a mini. It's a mini. Oubliette Minisodes.
Hello, and welcome to a special bonus episode here on Movie Oubliette. Conrad here, reporting from the Toronto International Film Festival, which I'm visiting for the first time, but luckily I have an expert here with me.
Hello, this is Joe Lipsett from the Horror Queers, and occasional guest here on Movie Oubliette.
Yes, and I couldn't have had a better guide to Toronto and the festival, because this is, how many years have you been coming to the festival now?
Oh gosh, yeah, I think I'm maybe at year 10 now,
Wow.
So it's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're the veteran, I'm the rookie, but I've had a lot of fun.
Oh good, yeah, I think you've seen some pretty good representative TIFF-style films.
Yeah. A good mix of stuff. Of course, we will focus here on our favourite genres, sci-fi, horror, and fantasy. And in this episode, we thought we'd look at a clutch of body horror movies. Yes. A lot of body horror.
So much. I'm always fascinated when we see these kind of recurring themes. And you cued me to this earlier this week when you said, I feel like I just keep seeing people grappling with body horror. And, you know, very exciting. It's kind of having a moment. But a lot of women-centered body horror.
Yeah, so three, two of them very buzzy titles, I think. So
yes.
The Substance, I think, is The Mothership.
Yes, so this is the new film by Coralie Fargeat. So she directed Revenge, I want to say back in 2017. So it's been a while waiting for this sophomore effort. But this is a big one, right? This is Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, very buzzy. It's got a great ad campaign.
And what I love about the ad campaign and seeing the eventual movie is that the ad campaign has such a striking visual and audio style. And sometimes, because that's been created by an ad agency or people that specialize in trailers, you go and see the movie and it doesn't have that flavor at all.
Yes.
This movie is that trailer. Absolutely.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. And I have insider information that I know Fargeat is actually very hands-on. So I think what you're seeing is her vision being reflected in the marketing campaign. She wants to make sure that it is emblematic of the film she has made.
Well, they absolutely nailed it. So we are watching Demi Moore in probably a career-defining performance, or certainly a sort of renaissance-defining performance for an actor who'd sort of fallen out of the limelight for a few years, I would say.
Yeah, I really want to say that the last time people saw her in a significant capacity was probably the second Charlie's Angel film.
Yes.
And that's a while ago.
It is.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, she's in full superstar mode here. And I love that, you know, she's almost playing off a public persona because the character that she's playing is this mega successful Jane Fonda-esque workout video maven. She's built a complete empire, but it's been decided by a very lecherous and disgusting looking Dennis Quaid that she is over the hill and she needs to be replaced with a hot new product.
She does, yeah. Dennis Quaid playing a character called Harvey, which I don't think is a mistake.
Nope, not at all. There's nothing subtle about this movie.
Not at all, no. The visual style you see in the trailer is evident throughout the film, and Quaid is presented in a way that makes him utterly repellent. It's the most unflattering performance I've ever seen. Camera angles, everything. Yeah. He is made to look like a all-consuming monster.
Yeah, thoroughly disgusting. And it's actually a bit sad. This role was originally going to be played by Ray Liotta before he passed.
And he would have been good.
He would have been amazing.
Yeah, but Quaid is good too.
He's also really good, yeah.
Yeah, because usually he's so likable, so this is quite fun, seeing him be so revolting.
Yeah, but I wonder, Conrad, in case people don't actually know what The Substance is about, what is the logline for this movie?
So essentially, you get the sense of it in the trailer, which is that Demi Moore's character decides to take up this very secretive experimental treatment that will give her the opportunity to experience youth and beauty, or the most perfect version of herself.
Yes.
And although it's not made clear in the trailer what the mechanics of that are, when you watch the film, what's interesting about it is that they are sort of symbiotic.
Yes.
So they are two separate entities. It's not that her body changes herself. She lies dormant for
A week.
a week while the perfect version of herself lives sort of a version of her life. I mean, they never pass off as though they're the same character.
No. And that was the thing that was the most interesting to me that the marketing had not revealed. I very much thought, okay, so we're going to do body transformation. It's going to be Demi Moore turning into Margaret Qualley and vice versa. And it's not at all. They're two completely separate entities, except for the fact that they're constantly reminded by this, baseless corporation, you are one. So they are beholden to each other to make this work. And of course, the conflict and the tension in the film comes about when one of them starts to get a little more greedy and tries to buy out some extra time.
Yes, which has terrible consequences
Yes.
for the other person.
And fantastic consequences for the audience because this film is disgusting.
Yes. And largely practical, apart from a few places, or digitally enhanced practical effects. So it is wonderfully gloopy and revolting.
Yes.
Reminded me very much of Brian Yuzna's Society, which
I
think was the very first thing we ever did on Movie Oubliette.
Oh.
So, yeah, it's standing on the shoulders of that, I would say.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's revolting and shocking and goes places that you would never imagine it would go, but all with a sense of glee. I mean, the audience I was in was roaring with laughter frequently.
Yes. Yeah, it's very, very funny. As I said, it's not subtle at all, but in terms of satire, it is wickedly sharp. Like, this is... I think Fargeat is on record as saying she made this movie and she was very angry and she wanted people to feel it. And I will say it's not an unpleasant viewing experience because it is so candy colored and just, watching Margaret Qualley and Demi Moore just kind of chip away at each other is incredibly satisfying. But you very much understand that this is actually all anger directed at men.
Yes. The men are just these comical caricatures of disgusting, lecherous monsters. There is not a single redeeming character in the entire movie who is male, I don't think.
No. But it's also quite an isolated film in a lot of ways. Like, we're really watching these two women struggle to find the balance when they have their time. It's very interesting because Margaret Qualley's character gets to go and be the shining pop star of the moment, right? So there's a lot of montage of her with her workout assistants going through the routines, and her star is ascending and she's living this glamorous life. And then Demi Moore kind of gets the Requiem for a Dream treatment, where she just kind of debases herself and gets into all kinds of grotesquerie. But both actresses just dive into these roles with relish. Like, I would be very, very surprised if, well, I think Demi Moore for sure is going to get a lock on a Best Actress nomination.
Oh, sure.
But I would be surprised that the film doesn't end up garnering a lot of awards attention.
Yeah, no, it should, because it is most definitely tapping into one of the biggest talking points of our times, just sociologically. And yeah, it is such a fever dream and such a bright, burning anger that drives it. I think the defining image of it for me from the trailer is Demi Moore looking at herself in the mirror, having spent, once you've seen the movie, a long time working on her makeup to try to compete with this younger version of herself that's out there. And just the way that she looks at herself with pure rage and hatred and smears the lipstick across her face is...
Yeah. I think any number of shots could be printed out, framed, put on people's walls, because they are just so beautifully stylized. And I will say, we've talked a little bit about the body horror, but there is some absolutely disgusting, gross, enjoyable stuff in here. I will say I'm someone who does not enjoy needles. Right. I cannot handle needles, and this one was an incredibly challenging watch.
Yeah.
But I guess the other issue is that for some folks, this movie may be a little too long. So it is clocking in at about 2 hours and 20 minutes.
It is, yeah, and I felt it. And I think once the battle between the two women was kind of played out, that reached a climax, it felt as though the movie just derailed into 20 minutes of excess.
Yeah.
But the trouble is that I wouldn't want to miss that excess because it's so wonderful. But at the same time, it does feel as though it's unmoored itself from its central premise at that point.
Yeah, there's definitely a dip before you get the extreme payoff, but the payoff is so good that it's almost undeniable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that is probably one of the titles that people were most excited about coming into the festival, and I certainly enjoyed watching it on day one.
100%. It's starting the festival on an absolute high.
Yeah. By contrast, there was another film that is rather similar called Shell, which I was interested in seeing. It's got Elizabeth Moss and Kate Hudson. It's directed by Max Minghella, and it's a very similar premise. It's aging star using experimental techniques, secretive, with a corporation that's headed up by Kate Hudson doing her very best Goldie Hawn from Death Becomes Her impersonation.
Yes.
And yeah, this one just pales by comparison. It's so unfortunate it came at the same festival, came at the same time.
Yeah, the premise and even the kind of women competing for the attention and the affection and the even just acceptance of men is definitely identical across the two titles. I think it shows that it's directed by a man. Minghella isn't bad, but he doesn't have the same kind of flourish that Fargeat has. So this feels a little bit more pedestrian, but one of the things that I'm very curious, we've not seen a trailer for this. So we saw a still image of the two actresses and then the log line, and that's why we decided to check it out. It's actually quite a bit sillier than I expected. There was a piece in the Hollywood Reporter that clarified they wanted to just make an entertaining film. And it feels like a throwback to a kind of Lifetime 90s movie.
Yeah.
And for the most part, that's actually quite effective. I just wish that it had the visual sense to go along with it so that people understood how playful this film ultimately is.
No, I completely agree with you on the aesthetics. It looks so much like it's a bit of a mishmash because you have a red-gloved killer. So you've got a bit of giallo, but with a different coloured glove going on. So it starts off with a really middle-of-the-road stalker slasher opening.
Yes, Elizabeth Berkley in full vamp mode who just gets dispatched and you think, okay, I'm not exactly sure what kind of film I'm watching, but I think that is a bit of a cue that we're watching something that isn't taking itself entirely seriously, but then we have to go through the motions with Elizabeth Moss's character, who is a struggling actress. She's not as fit. She's not as pretty as she needs to be competitive. So she undergoes this process that Kate Hudson's company offers. So she undergoes this shell revolutionary treatment, very mysterious. Please sign the NDA. And you're thinking, okay, well, we all know where this is going. Obviously, it's too good to be true. Obviously, something bad is going to happen to her. And that's exactly what happens until you get to the absolute cuckoo bananas last act of this film, which all of a sudden you realize, oh, this is why it's a Dark Castle film.
Yeah. It turns into a monster on the loose.
Yes.
Extravaganza.
Yeah, and it's not unexpected, but it definitely went to places that I didn't think it was going to have the balls to do. And that last act is very enjoyable. It's so silly and fun. And Kate Hudson is overacting. You know, she's got the nail game that changes from scene to scene. So she's having a blast. And I just kept thinking, oh, I wish the film had have had this energy throughout the entire runtime.
Yeah, I thought exactly the same thing. Yeah, as soon as Kate Hudson shows up as a black plastic crocodile with silver claws, then you know you're in for a good time.
Yes, not literally. She's just costumed that way.
She's just wearing this ridiculous outfit.
Yes.
But the rest of the movie does, I mean, the phrase that I wrote down was that it sits in an uncanny valley somewhere between just being mediocre, sincere but mediocre,
Yeah.
or being a really camp parody. And if it had committed either way, well, I think if it had committed to sincere and being mediocre, that would have been a disaster.
Yeah.
I think if you've got Kate Hudson right there and you've got Death Becomes Her hovering in the background, the aging actresses fighting against each other, then why wouldn't you go full camp for the whole movie?
Yeah, and this is interesting, right? Because we're talking about the film in isolation. I don't believe it currently has a distributor, but I did see a number of people say, I think that could probably play well on streaming, which makes you think if we do try to eschew a theatrical window, you could have leaned into the campy, ridiculous Death Becomes Her-ness of it, because I think people would be very receptive to that.
Yeah.
It may not make money, but it probably would have been embraced by people having watch parties.
Definitely. It would be a good couple of beers movie, I would say.
Yes.
Although I did note down that it has a fucking cat scare.
It does. Now, whether or not it knows that and it's playing into our expectations is not entirely clear. Again, because Minghella doesn't give us enough. It's not clear if he's winking at us or not.
No, it's not. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fairly middle of the road for the majority of the time until that last act. And then it got interesting.
Then it got interesting.
But boy, does it suffer in comparison to the substance.
Yes.
So, slightly different, Nightbitch, which you haven't seen.
I didn't get to see this, but I have read the novel that it's based off of.
Okay. So this one is slightly different in that this is more of a drama. The body horror element to it is sort of a side note, I would say.
Right.
So it's a searing indictment of the experience the women have as mothers. It's great. There's this fantasy opening where Amy Adams' character is... she's shopping for groceries. She's got a toddler in the shopping cart. You can hear another one screaming and pulling things off the shelves in the background.
Of course.
And the woman who has taken her job at her place of work while she is on maternity leave comes up to her and asks her if she's enjoying being a stay-at-home mum. And she enters into this fantasy where she just reels out this vicious diatribe of just how awful it is, the loss of identity, the loss of your mental faculties, the loss of your sanity, and how you feel as though you've just given up everything and sacrificed everything.
Right.
And it's sort of the polemic of the whole movie.
Right.
But even before the title has come up.
Right, of course.
So that's what it's about. And it's visualized over the course of the film with her character experiencing these physical transformations as well as what's happening to her personally and emotionally. She starts to imagine that she's turning into a dog.
Yes.
And this physically manifests itself in terms of a tail. She also has a heightened sense of smell.
Right.
Local dogs start bringing offerings to her doorstep that she finds in the morning.
Okay.
But it is very much a magical realist drama where I feel as though the magical realist element has been sort of played down for the movie with an eye towards getting more of a mainstream audience and possibly some awards buzz.
Yes, yeah, of course. Amy Adams, famously nominated all the time, never wins.
Right.
And some people speculate that she's just constantly chasing these high-profile, kind of buzzy, but still very mainstream roles. We should note that the writer-director of this is Marielle Heller, who has had some pretty good success. So she did Can You Ever Forgive Me?, which is an amazing film, not genre at all, but it's got a great kind of dry sense of humor. And then I think she did the Mr. Rogers biopic.
Yeah, Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, 2019, just before the pandemic.
And that one is a really good tearjerker. So this is like I actually really love her direction, but she does pick these kind of off-kilter dark comedy or drama comedies. And it too often, I think, feels like there's a compromise being made to satisfy a mainstream, wider audience. So even though I'm sure Amy Adams does a great job, looking at this, I just thought, this is a high concept that doesn't actually want to be high concept.
Yeah, and that was very much my experience, which is a shame because it touches on various aspects of this issue. Like, I mean, I particularly like Scoot McNairy as the well-meaning husband.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he is a nice guy. He is what you would hope a supportive father, husband would be in a relationship. But he still, nevertheless, completely underestimates the scale of the never-ending grind
Right.
that a stay-at-home parent experiences and the loss of identity that comes along with it. And he's constantly putting his foot in it and getting it wrong. But you can see that he's trying, but you can see the inadequacy that's there and the test that it's putting on their relationship at the same time. And as the story progresses and obviously you come to conflict in the middle of the movie, you can kind of see the two characters sitting there once they've, spoilers, sort of separated.
Right. Yeah.
And you can just see them sort of both sitting there as though they've been hit by a freight train and not really knowing why or how this has happened to them, how they have gotten to that point in their lives.
Oh, that's interesting, because my experience reading the book was not one of enjoyment. The writing is all first-person narration, so you're trapped in this character's head. And part of the enticing piece is she imagining all of this fantastical transformation elements, or is she sleep deprived, she doesn't know who she is anymore, and so on. So the novel really wants to have it both ways. I personally just did not connect with the writing. I found it quite grating, and the book was a struggle to finish. But I was curious about how the film was going to balance its tone, because it did seem like it was leaning in a bit more towards the comedy. I'm assuming there's still voiceover narration, or no?
There is, and there is, as I say, these moments where she just goes into fantasy and tells you exactly what she's feeling.
Okay.
In a sort of imagined parallel universe where she actually says the things that are on her mind rather than just bottling them all up inside.
And I'm imagining that that's probably pretty successful comedy, right?
Yeah, it's funny. It played well with the crowd that I was with, for sure.
Okay. So would you ultimately say that the film was successful?
I think it is, but the problem is, and I can't speak to this because this is not an experience I have had and will never have, but the problem that I had with it watching it was that I can imagine, like, certainly my mother's generation, possibly, or specifically her, would find this insulting.
Oh, okay.
She always talks quite proudly about the fact that she coped very well with children at a very young age, with the husband doing a full-time job. My dad was in the army and was not there, and certainly not playing the kind of role that you see Scoot McNairy playing in this film. So I don't know, the sense I get from her is that she kind of chafes at all of these expectations that women have, that they should be able to be a mother and maintain an artistic, creative life as Amy Adams's character so desperately wants to here, or a career, or the suggestion that raising children is somehow too much for women, that they cannot cope with it, and it is mentally cruel or damaging to them. So I don't know. I watch it and think, is that just because of the generational differences in terms of expectations for women in society? Or is it that the film is... The sense that I got when I walked away from it is this glib, is this sort of eat, pray, love level of analysis of a very, very serious and complicated issue.
Yeah, the impression I got just based off of my experience reading the novel and then watching the trailer was that it is a little bit of that. But I think that this will also kind of be the catnip / doggy chow equivalent to contemporary women of a certain age, right? Like, I think that this is a very smart decision by Amy Adams, because I think her demographic is going to look at this and say, I relate strongly to that. As a modern woman who is trying to make it all work, it's fucking rough.
It is, yeah. And I think perhaps, to be fair, what it does convey very, very well is the scale of the challenge and the scale of the burden of all of these different expectations, and the feeling that you are failing individually as a human being, but also as a representative of your gender.
Oh boy.
So I have no doubt that it will be a huge hit and will probably garner awards. It's got some great dialogue. Amy Adams is brilliant in it. So is Scoot McNairy.
Okay.
It's very much Amy Adams' film.
Yes.
But at the same time, I did come away from it feeling this may have oversimplified something.
Right.
But perhaps it's still helpful and useful despite that.
Yeah.
So finally, in our clutch of body horrors, I wanted to talk about a very, very different film that we got to see. This one male-centered.
Ah, a change of pace.
And that was Else, which is from Belgium. It's a France-Belgique movie, maybe a co-production.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I'm going to massacre this name. So it's written and directed by Thibault Emin.
I think so, yeah.
That's a good guess. Starring Mathieu Sampre as Anx and Edith Proust as Cassie. And this one I felt was more solidly in the camp of cosmic horror.
Oh, yes.
Rather than body horror. So this one posits a world in which there is a pandemic, very much draws from our collective experience of that. There's a lockdown in France.
Yeah.
And people start melding with the environment. Like they start melting into the floor, melting into their walls, their home, their furniture, each other. So it is a body horror, but also just a metaphysical nightmare.
Yeah, and I will say some of the visuals in this film, it's very dreamlike. Playful's the wrong word, but it does have a strong sense of its own style and identity. And it knows, I think, how to manipulate people, because the other interesting thing is that, sure, it's a virus pandemic movie, it's a body horror film, but I would also argue that this is a romantic film. And we're very much invested in the relationship between Anx and Cass because they're so fresh and so new, right? Like the film opens with this failed attempt at sex, which is clearly a one-night stand that each partner likes the other one, but then mitigating circumstances essentially force them to cohabitate during the lockdown. And we start to really invest in the nature of their relationship. But also, people are fucking merging into their walls and furniture and stuff.
Yes, and it's very much a film about symbiosis and the nature of sharing a space, cohabiting at the same time. And this is played out not just with Anx and Cass, who are very new to each other, trying to share a space with each other for the first time. Cass is a little bit of a manic pixie dream girl.
A little bit, yeah.
And yeah, I'm not sure I'd want to be locked down with her.
She would be a lot.
Yeah. But you also hear it from the neighbors because they're in a block of apartments. So you hear it from the people above and the people below. You can hear the tensions that are being created. Or in the case of one character that's talking to them who's just, I don't think she's a cat lady. I think she has a dog.
She's a dog lady.
She's a dog lady.
Yeah. She's a Nightbitch. No, but it is interesting, right? Because the people in the apartment building clearly don't know each other very well either. But the whole building is so interconnected that we can speak through vents or we can speak through the garbage chute. So again, we're reinforcing this idea that just because you are in close proximity to people doesn't mean you actually know them. But you can be. Like, Anx gains a certain amount of comfort, in a way, from being able to talk to other people, particularly when weirder shit starts happening in his own apartment. And I like that the film is so incredibly cosmic and interested in, like some of these visuals are, frankly, mind-blowing. Like, there's a gorgeous grossness to the horror that I really, really appreciated. But at the same time, it feels eminently grounded in the human experience, which sounds like the most bullshit film person expression ever. But it really is about Anx just kind of learning, who do I like? How do I want to connect with people?
Yeah, and very much about his relationships with women.
Yeah.
Because hovering in the background of all of it is the mother.
Dead mom.
Dead mom alert, yes, who died of cancer, and he was unable to nurture her and care for her in the way that he would have liked to have done because he found her disgusting. He describes the process of her disease as he watched her become a thing. Yeah. Which is a key line, I think.
Oh, yes.
Because he gets, spoilers, he gets to experience that in all kinds of ways during the course of this movie, people merging with and becoming things.
Yes.
And so much of the film is about that relationship, that physical bond with the mother and with lovers, significant others. Particularly, I noticed that I was quite happy that it started off with an ASMR sequence.
I did think of you when I saw it.
Yeah, he watches an ASMR video to relax, which is very much about creating an artificial sense of, I think it stems back to grooming.
Yeah, and really he's trying to delay or just calm himself, right? Because he is a very anxious person. Like that's, I think, part of the reason why we're meant to assume he has performance anxiety when it comes to sex. But also the other element I noted is that his apartment feels like a bit of a childish cocoon. He's got a number of totems that clearly call back to a kind of stunted growth. He seems like a bit of a child.
Yeah, he does. And so, his ultimate decision was not too much of a surprise to me, but I won't say anymore. But yeah.
I will just say though, like this is a very artsy film, which is maybe not surprising then that it hails from France, but I just think the visuals are so rapturous. Like, I loved how confronting and disgusting they were, but also there's a tactile nature that I found really visually pleasurable to watch. And the film changes its environment pretty frequently, so it feels like we are seeing new things, even though we're spending most of the film trapped in his apartment.
Yeah. No, it takes on a huge cosmic scale.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really does. Yeah, I thought it was remarkable. I really enjoyed it, and particularly I thought of Dan. I was thinking of you, Dan, while I was watching the film because the sound design is exquisite.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, there's a particular moment I noted where, yes, unfortunately, the dog in the
Does
apartment
die.
it does not do well.
No.
And because it merges with the building, there is a moment where you can hear it, but its howls are merged with the sound of wood.
Yes.
Sort of creaking and groaning, and it's beautifully done.
Yeah.
And there is a reveal there. There is a shock reveal there at one point that is very disturbing.
Yes, I compared it to a key moment from M. Night Shyamalan's The Village, just in terms
Right.
of its effective. Like, this is the first feature by Emin. This is actually developed from a short of the same name, which I've not seen, but this is a talent. Like, this director's ability to convey both emotion, but also through visual imagery is really, really impactful. Like, it's the kind of thing where you say, oh, I can't wait to see where we go next with this creative.
Yeah, I don't think this one will get a very wide release.
No. This is definitely too artsy, and I mean the fact that it's also a foreign film, like it's a non-English film, I think it's going to struggle to find its audience, but the people who will like it are going to like it a lot.
Yeah, you're going to love it. I could see it cropping up on Mubi, maybe.
I could see that.
Yeah, definitely. So that's our brace of body horrors. So many body horrors.
Quite a few. Many more than I expected.
Yeah. So we'll be back again with another episode to talk about another clutch of movies that we saw. But bye for now.